I want to tackle a subject that is very difficult, and this is not obviously exhaustive. But the problem of evil, we all struggle with, whether we're atheists or whether we're Christian or religious of any kind. Probably the core problem, like that sand in the oyster that gets rolled over and over until it becomes a pearl. In all religious traditions, is the problem of evil, what to do with it. And as we wrestle through that, we develop so many other elements of our theology. But the funny thing is that sand never disappears, right? It remains at the center of the pearl. And as a Christian, I have wrestled for years with that, looked at Augustine's answer to it, where it's absence or privation of good, which theologically makes a lot of sense. Philosophically, it has its weaknesses. And then it consumes so many of the debates in the Christian community between a Calvinist and a Wesleyan. I think that's better than Arminian as a description, where it's either free will and God allows that, or God's sovereign over it, and these have all theological implications. And so when you get out to the fringes of these theological doctrines, it's very intriguing and very rich theoretically. But at the center, it still hasn't gone away, right? We still don't know what to do with the problem of evil. And I don't know that I have a full answer for that, but I think this is something to contribute to that conversation. And as I've wrestled with it, it's given me some peace. Not that it's solved, but a peace. And I think it's subsequently too. Let me just throw this in. Initially, sorry, not subsequently. The problem of evil for religionists is equivalent to the problem of good for a secularist, atheist, or an agnostic. Christians wrestle if God is good, God is all powerful. Then why does evil exist? If God is good and all powerful, either he's not good, he's malevolent, or he's not all powerful. Other than that, we can't figure how evil would exist. On the flip side of that, just to be fair, if you're an atheist and everything is materialistic, there's no meaning, then there's nothing that's good. Goodness is that which adheres to or imitates some standard. And if the universe is random from its beginning, then meaning and good are really just apparitions, or they don't really exist. They're inventions, and they have no right to exist. So as far as an atheist, let them deal with it. They don't have any problem with evil. It's a condition of natural life, but they can't define good, really, and I'll leave that alone for the time being. But for religionists, it's a problem of evil, if goodness is really part of the universe or part of God, ultimately. So here's something to consider in that. I think the reason why this is often so problematic is that we try to conceive of the relationship between God and nature in a certain way. So we say, if God is good, he wouldn't have a nature that's evil, or that allows evil. So God seems to be out of control, or he can't make it good, or he can't be good himself. That relationship between nature and God, however, is not necessarily stable. And it's not necessarily that way, that however God is, nature has to be. There may be another answer to that, in the sense that God created things to be good, but then man decided not just to be evil, because I think that's one aspect, right? To do sinful things, to murder and lie and steal. But he chose primarily to reject God's kingship over life. Now, evil as a moral character quality, that is difficult, I admit. Where does that come from? Where something's good does evil come from? I'm going to leave that one alone. But once you've decided to abandon God as your king, evil is the result. That's the first decision. So biblically speaking, if you look at the story of Adam and Eve, when Eve is first approached by the serpent in that story, the serpent didn't say, hey, go disobey God, or go do something evil, go steal something, go murder something. He said, first of all, let's agree that God isn't king. That's what the serpent said. Did God actually say in Genesis chapter 2 or 3, sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. So the first thing that happens is that man rejects God as king. Then comes the evil of lying and hiding, and then Cain's murder and everything leading up to Noah and forward. If that's true, then maybe what we see in evil is that moral evil is the result of rejecting God. What if God, when man rejected him, said to man, the earth is yours. The earth belongs to you now. And we tend to, when we see sin and crime happen and death and murder happen, we say, boy, God really stinks, he didn't solve that. What if God is saying, man really stinks? You wanted to be kings, you wanted to govern yourselves, you wanted to run your own world. God could have run it for us, which is what he does in the garden. He's running the world perfectly. What you see in the Garden of Eden is not creational beauty. it creates our beauty. God is making a perfect arrangement. As long as he is king, the garden works pure. There's no murder, there's no death, there's vulnerability and love. The relationship between Adam and Eve is perfect. There's plenty, there's food, there's no disease. But what if God said, that's what I'm doing as king? Now, if you sin and you don't want me as king, because that's what sin ultimately is, then you be king. Basically, God is saying, I've given it to you. I've given you time, I've given you earth, I've given you resources, I've given you relationships, and they're yours to control now. So really the evil that happens is, this is what happens when we're in control. You know, I think we always want to say is, if God were in control, this wouldn't happen. No, that's an inverse to me. The reality is, this is what happens when man is in control. When man runs society, when man runs economics, when man runs politics, when man runs our relationships, this is what we get. It's actually the wrong thing to say, boy, if God were in control. If God were in control, we'd still be in the garden. Well, maybe it wouldn't be a garden anymore, maybe it'd be a city, but the point is, it wouldn't be this flawed thing we're living in now. It doesn't answer everything, I realize, but there's a sense in which, I think, when we talk about evil and where it comes from, where it belongs, I think we need to put it where it actually belongs. Who owns it? We own it, right? We own it as people. We've rejected God's kingship over our lives, over our communities, our societies, our relationships. And the result, therefore, is a world of evil, moral evil. And so the next time things go wrong, we might say, boy, if God were king, yes, exactly right. If God were king, this wouldn't be happening. But we might ask ourselves, what happens when man is king? Woman is king. Well, this is what we get. We get the evil we've created. Which leads to a very interesting corollary, if that's true. The way we redeem this world is, again, to reclaim God as king. And this is what Christ is, right? The Messiah, the king. If we live in my heart, my life, my community as if Christ were king, then I work back the evil that's happened since the fall. I'm reclaiming Christ's kingship, which is selflessness and obedience and humility and selfless love, loving neighbor as I love myself and loving my God with my heart, mind, soul, and strength. That is replacing God as king again. And when that happens, everything else under gets ordered right. My relationships with my friends, my relationships with my spouse, my relationships with my family, with my community, looking out for the sick and the poor among us. All of that is a reordering that starts with making Christ king again. So good really happens when you make Christ king. I'm not saying Christians all do. Many Christians that claim this Christ as their king don't act that way, myself included. But if we really made Christ king again, then we would unwind the evil we've created. So evil really doesn't come from God. That we own. But obeying Christ again as king redeems that. It makes things good again. It makes things right. It reorders our lives again. Maybe that's just a way to think about evil.